Thank you very much, Presiding Officer, and I wish to start by thanking my officials who have worked exceptionally hard on the preparation involved in bringing this bill forward and bringing it forward at pace, and to pay tribute to their painstaking work, but also to their patience, not least for the putting up with the Cabinet Secretary. Oops. Clap for the civil servants. Once again, Presiding Officer, I do want to reiterate my thanks to parliamentary colleagues across the chamber. I would, of course, like to emphasise that working together isn't a one-way street. It requires everybody to communicate. It requires everybody to change a wee bit and at least move forward together a little bit. But I am appreciative that Parliament as a whole agreed to this bill being an emergency bill, notwithstanding the challenges that presents, as well as the opportunities that it brings. And of course, should this bill pass today, as I very much hope and anticipate it will do so only 1 week after the UK bill was passed at Westminster. And that in itself was accelerated due to the general election being announced. And I am not going to revisit or rehash past arguments. I know the UK Government legislate all the time for Scotland, and sometimes I cooperate with that and sometimes I object. But today is not about the politicians, it's not about our political parties or indeed our institutions. It is wholly and squarely about sub-postmasters here in Scotland and their friends and families who have been affected tragically by this scandal. And the central aim of this bill is, of course, to quash wrongful convictions that resulted from the use of defective Horizon IT system. And I hope that the bill is a recognition of the scale of the miscarriage of justice, and that it will go some way to allowing all of those who have suffered to feel vindicated, and that this will help to restore their reputations among the communities they serve. I, of course, share the discomfort that Jamie Green expressed with primary legislation automatically quashing convictions. But the nature and the scale of this miscarriage of justice has meant that this legislation has been absolutely necessary, although as Justice Secretary I have to put in record that it does not set a precedent. But the low responses from the sterling efforts from the Scottish Criminal Cases Review, and they didn't just put a letter in the post attached with a first-class stamp. I know they went to extensive efforts. They employed tracing agents. They went above and beyond. But that low response speaks to the scale in which people have lost faith with our justice system. And that is why it is now necessary to remove the onus from individuals and to move the onus, in this case, back on to the state, where the responsibility in this instance lies. As I've previously said, Presiding Officer, I recognise that the scale of the scandal goes beyond those who were prosecuted and convicted. There were many sub-postmasters who were forced to repay supposed shortfalls created by the faulty software, and they deserve not just our sympathy but our support. And like others in the debate today, saying that there are many lessons to be learned doesn't quite capture the magnitude of the change that now has to take place. And I do, however, have faith and hope in the Wyn Williams inquiry that that is the route to address the issues that go beyond this bill. For my part, Presiding Officer, I will of course continue to engage with the relevant UK ministers once they are in place after the general election, most likely on the issue of compensation, because the most recently announced scheme is still to be established. And again, on behalf of the Scottish Government, we will certainly look to make targeted interventions to ensure that people are indeed informed of their rights. Presiding Officer, one of the themes that has come up from today's debate, I suppose, is that collective sense of shame that it took a TV programme, as Audrey Nicholl says, to shift the dial. And I suppose by some way of personal atonement, I would commend to people the book by Nick Wallace entitled The Great Post Office Scandal. Because in that book he narrates that the Post Office holds a unique position in our society right across all the home nations of the UK. And as history students will know, the General Post Office predates the Industrial Revolution, the British Empire and indeed the establishment of Britain itself. It is the oldest government agency, and until recent times it was the main interface between state and citizens. And the impact of this injustice is profound and shocking, and the reverberations of it will be felt for some time to come. And I want to end, Presiding Officer, by quoting the words of Seema Mishra, who was the former West Byfleet sub-postmaster, and her words in July 2021 in the book by Nick Wallace, when she said of herself and her husband, "In 2005, Devinder and I invested our own money in a post office branch and retail business where we were proud to have become part of such a famous British institution. When I was sentenced to prison on my eldest son's 10th birthday, all of our dreams and hopes were destroyed. When I was convicted of theft in 2010, my faith and belief in justice was shattered. I was pregnant at the time. My despair caused me to think of suicide. Thoughts of my unborn child kept a bit of hope and me alive." And also, Presiding Officer, the words of Jafinder Borang outside the court in Southwark at the end of 2020 when her conviction was overturned. And she said, "When we've had our down days, we've been there for each other." And she's speaking of the solidarity of those affected and the campaigners. And on the day her conviction was overturned, she says, "I can now get on with the rest of my life now. It's the worst thing to be found guilty for something that you haven't done. I'm a law-abiding citizen, and today is just absolutely wonderful." Presiding Officer, while this bill cannot change the past, I am profoundly grateful to colleagues in this chamber in helping to get it through Parliament quickly, allowing us to at least go some way to righting the wrongs that have been done and to provide some comfort and, I hope, the pathway to redress for those that have been so unfairly treated. And I am delighted that members have indicated their support for the bill, meaning that this important bill be passed at decision time tonight to help rectify this injustice, quash these wrongful convictions and enable Scottish sub-postmasters to access the financial redress they rightly deserve. Thank you.